Hey, it says we're
We're
live.
live.
I don't know if I believe it though.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. It's about to go down in week 10 of the National Football League, and that's Indianapolis and Tennessee on Thursday Night Football. Some Thursday Night Football games are like, and some Thursday Night Football games are like really exciting. And this one's just kind of what's there, right? I mean, they're going to play. Maybe, like as far as we know, they'll play on Thursday night, and it'll be the Colts side first. Bloom. And did we figure out anything with the running backs? I mean, so long as
Right.
Jonathan Taylor doesn't fumble, then he's startable as a low end RB2 or flex play. Like that running back situation will give you nightmares, it'll give you headaches. The tight end situation is almost as bad. No Jack Doyle, and then that means more Mo Alley Cox and dash of Trey Burton, or maybe it's the other way around because the coaches love Trey Burton. Rational coaching and rational quarterbacking it's not a thing with Indianapolis. So how the hell do you navigate this one?
This is a really fun game to have on Thursday night, simply because I think it sends that shockwave through us. We're in the second half of the season now, and the stakes are higher, the screws turn tighter, and the game changes. And I think it changes really in a way to favor both of these teams, not necessarily favor them in this game, but favor the way that they're built. And what we have here is a showdown. AFC South supremacy. Now, these teams are going to play again in 2 weeks. So we'll see how this round goes. But on the Indianapolis side, if we're looking at Indianapolis offense against Tennessee defense, this was supposed to be a power running team. You know, this was supposed to be a team kind of like the Titans, pass 20, 25 times a game, take your shots, really establish the run, and have your defense put the clamps on the opposing offense. But in recent weeks, as Indianapolis, and their season, you know, they've beat up on some weaker teams. Maybe that comeback win against Cincinnati looks a little better. And then they play a team like Baltimore, which has some similar qualities, and they got pushed around, really. Offense didn't do much. So can Rivers play better this week against Tennessee? It's an easier matchup, certainly. Their secondary. Not saying you're going to go with Rivers as more than a, two quarterback superflex option, desperation option. And you're not, again, rinse repeat, right, Cease? It's a three-headed backfield. I think last week they almost had identical snap counts. Maybe you play Jonathan Taylor because he has the theoretical ceiling, but Nyheim Hines, if he was used more, you have some injuries at wide receiver. Why not use Nyheim Hines? Because that would make too much sense. And at wide receiver, well, there hasn't been a consistent wide receiver this year anyway. And again, this team probably wants to pass the ball 20 or 25 times in an ideal game script. Tight end is the one position that might have some gold for fantasy football with Jack Doyle out. Mo Alley Cox has gone from projected not practicing to limited, so he's probably going to play, but maybe it is more of a Trey Burton issue with fantasy because they're going to favor him more, I would think. And he probably is a better play than Alley Cox, although Alley Cox has a high ceiling. But with the Colts, I think you want to limit Rivers' errors. You want to get the running game on track, and then you turn the page to the other side. And I think job one is one that they're very well equipped for, which is stopping Derrick Henry.
Yes, and it's something that in the chat room, Sarthak was like, everything's clinched. He's going up against King Henry.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's going to be a lot of King Henry. Short week, so we're watching the status of A.J. Brown, Bloom, full disclosure, Wednesday morning. And they didn't hold a practice on Monday, but they, an estimation, said that Brown wasn't going to practice. So we'll watch that. More Corey Davis. More Jonnu Smith, please. It's just science. It just makes sense. But the Tennessee offense is fairly simple, Bloom, if everybody's healthy.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see Henry get his 25 carries. And this could easily be one where Henry's first 23 are for 50 yards and 24 and 25 are for like 100 and a touchdown. It's just, in the Indy defense, it is a test. Now, it's a test they passed last week. The Steelers, there's Ravens cleat prints on the Steelers' run defense faces from that game 2 weeks ago. But the Colts really shut them down. So another test this week. Now, if you're Arthur Smith, do you go in expecting a strength against strength, right? So why wouldn't you counterpunch right away? That you come out passing on first down. You come out running play action passing. And we know that Ryan Tannehill can hit those big plays to of course, A.J. Brown, but also Johnny Smith up the seam. And this could be a bounce back week for Corey Davis, who didn't do anything because they passed the ball 21 times, completed 10. So I think that this could be a game if we're projecting this out. Now, of course, they play again in 2 weeks, so maybe you save that. I don't know. But I do think that you would expect the Colts to be almost overplaying the run and saying Ryan Tannehill has to beat us, and Ryan Tannehill can do that. So maybe Ryan Tannehill can be more prominent earlier in this game. But for fantasy, it's pretty straightforward. I think the tougher choices here are maybe Corey Davis and Johnny Smith. Johnny Smith at least got back into the scoring column last week. I guess whether or not you play a Davis or a Smith is whether you believe that the Colts will do well enough against the run to force Tannehill to pass, maybe even if the Colts can get a lead on the road, which, it's tough, Cease. Over the course of the year, we've thought of these teams differently at different times, right? There was a time that we thought the Titans, well, they might be, if not the classic, a team that can hang with anybody in the AFC. Now we're not so sure. Indy, week to week, you get a totally different picture of this team. Okay, they beat up on the Detroits of the world and teams like that. So, this is going to be a really interesting fact-finding game. And then again, the fascinating thing is 2 weeks from now, do it again.
Do it again, rinse, repeat. And don't you believe with Arthur Smith, like he'll be creative enough?
Yeah.
Like a lot of coaches would be like, I'm not doing that. And
this is what we do.
You feel differently about the Titans, to be sure. Let's move to Sunday's action. And Houston and Cleveland is up next. And when you thought you had some you thought you had some Houston guys last week, right? And you're like, I'm going to throw in Randall Cobb as what the heck flex, and we'll see what we got here. Like, I'm going to throw in one of those tight ends. Hey, it's a Jordan Akins week. Nah. When they're splitting time at tight end, and then Cobb doesn't do anything because, well, Cooks and Fuller get it all. And then Duke Johnson Jr., revenge game, Bloom. And finally, I mean, they've been talking about, even Romeo started talking about it. We're going to use him more. Well, they have to. So how's that look from a fantasy perspective in week 10?
This one to me is, will Houston be an easy out in the second half of the year, or will they be a difficult out? And can Cleveland make a playoff push? Of course, we know that Deshaun Watson is not going to roll over. So because of that, you're likely to see some passing numbers here. However, he plays in front of behind a somewhat suspect offensive line, and you got Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, who's coming on, Sheldon Richardson. So this could be one of those games. Maybe Cleveland defense looks okay here. We're watching to see if Duke Johnson gets the start. David Johnson in concussion protocol. If Duke Johnson gets the start, project him similar to like Boston Scott starts. 3-4 catches, 15 carries, maybe a touchdown. A low-end running back too, but certainly you could do worse. And also we'll watch to see if Scotty Phillips gets the call-up from the practice squad here, the old Miss back. Cooks and Fuller, and this was a debate in the preseason, right? See, Cooks, right. Fuller, 6th, 7th, 8th round. They've been roughly equal. I think that Cooks has actually had the better ceiling games. Both are staying involved. Both had long touchdowns last week. I would expect that you want to play them both. And with Randall Cobb, if this is a struggle game for Deshaun Watson, Randall Cobb is that safety valve. So maybe in deeper leagues, you look at him in PPR leagues as someone that if you think that Deshaun Watson's going to struggle, then Randall Cobb could be instead of the downfield passing game and the tight ends. But see, like you said, they're splitting it. If this was consolidated, instead it's Darren Fells and Jordan Akins. Akins, of course, the more physically talented player. So we'll watch that as everybody needs a tight end, it seems. And Cleveland needs a win. They're coming out of a bye, and they got 2 weeks, and they got their quarterback off the COVID list today, Cease.
Hey, get him out there. Shoot some more commercials. Baker the Baby Maker. On the Cleveland side of things, we're left wondering, okay, what's there going to be for Jarvis Landry? And you ask if Houston's going to be an easy out. I would suggest no, or kind of my heart leans no, Bloom, right, because it's not their pick. It's not like, well, let's just get a better draft pick. That's not their pick. And you got something to prove, not necessarily for Romeo Crennel. I don't think this is a Raheem Morris type of situation where, Romeo might have a chance at the job. I just don't think he does. But if you're Houston, you got a lot of talented guys. They're going up against Cleveland. The return of one Nick Chubb. How does that, and it's not like Kareem Hunt set the world on fire when Nick Chubb was out, right? So now we've seen this before. Hunt goes to RB3 flex play, And Chubb is one of those players, at least for me, Bloom. I trust him as an RB1. Is like McCaffrey last week. Oh, he's back. I'm plugging him in. Like Chubb's back. Oh, I'm plugging him in. So how does that return of Nick Chubb impact this Browns offense?
Oh, the Texans have no answer for Nick Chubb. As long as Nick Chubb plays, and let's cross our I's and dot our T's, make sure that he's activated, make sure that he's ready for this game. Nick Chubb is going to run through this defense like they're made out of paper mache, you know. I mean, this is going to be like the running of the Bulls, except that, you know, the guy getting gored is any number of Texans defenders. And I think for the Browns, you know, it's just back to basics. You run the ball until the Texans show they can stop it. I don't think they can. It's a Chubb and Hunt week. And for Baker Mayfield, again, like we talked about with the Colts, they only want to throw the ball 15 or 20 times. Now, with Odell Beckham, you might get a play-action deep shot. But without Odell Beckham, it's kind of like Minnesota's offense last week. Okay, Irv Smith had 2 touchdowns. So that's what you're looking for, right? Like, can Austin Hooper score a touchdown or get 5 or 6 catches? And we are watching this to see if Hooper is the number one target with Beckham out, because we haven't seen Hooper yet without Beckham on the field. And then, of course, you've got Landry, and you've got Higgins. But I would say for this game, unless you think that Deshaun Watson's going to be able to hang, unless you think that Houston can get their defense off the field, then Baker's not going to throw a lot. So I don't think you're looking to the Browns passing game for answers here. I think you're looking to the Browns running game. It's going to be great to see Nick Chubb out there, man. I mean, he's just one of those guys that's fun to watch every single week. And it's fun to see the Browns pushing for a playoff spot. On the Baker thing, Cease, do you think it's because the commercials are bad? Like, would we get on him so much for the commercials if they were good or entertaining commercials?
He's trying to be like Peyton Manning funny with one,
Right.
not Peyton Manning's sense of humor, because Manning is a cutter. And then
Right.
2, without the success. Like Manning did all that crap when he'd already won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, get it done. And it's just today's NFL. Get off my lawn, commercials.
And they're just run so frequently that you can't avoid them. They're not good. They're not really good commercials.
Right. What are you going to do? We're going to talk about Washington football team against the Detroit Lions. That's what we're going to do. And Alex Smith is the quarterback. We had a question earlier in the chat room, Bloom. I'll find her if I can, about, here it is, Muzzy Geek. Duke or McKissick in full PPR. Well, you know, with Alex Smith in, his struggle target is J.D. McKissick. He's going to spread that ball around, girl, and make it happen. So, okay, Antonio Gibson, hold on to the rock. Like another breakout from you, please. Terry McLaurin is quarterback proof, which just shows you how special and how talented he is. You know, but again, okay, it's an Alex Smith offense. Plenty of McKissick, plenty of McLaurin. I hope Antonio Gibson comes through, and I'm not really trusting anybody else from Washington.
See, if I say Washington versus Detroit, and you go back through your brain files, anything pop up?
Oh no, no.
It's the game that It's the game that kept Barry Sanders from getting to a Super Bowl. The NFC title game. It was the closest we saw to Barry Sanders in a Super Bowl.
That was Stink's team.
Yeah,
I believe, right? Yeah, Stink was on that team.
So, Barry Sanders. I think I was in a bowling tournament that day. I remember watching it on the TVs, like behind the lanes. I guess we're gonna see Alex Smith start, and he was reasonably productive in that game. We're not worried about, unlike the first game that we saw Alex Smith, we're not worried about his ability for Terry McLaurin. Like you said, Terry McLaurin is next year second round pick in fantasy drafts. You know, he's let's see when he actually gets hooked up with a quarterback. Imagine if he was playing with Patrick Mahomes or Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson. Antonio Gibson, you like him. Look, Detroit is just, I loved saying it. See, every time we say something bad about Detroit's defense, we need to say Matt Patricia's defense. Matt Patricia's defense looks like ass. Whoops. Sorry, there goes our monetization. I mean, it's just, I say this because he was hired to make them a good defense, and they've spent on the defense in draft picks and in money. One of the worst defenses in the league. So you like Antonio Gibson. Maybe even Logan Thomas is what the heck tight end. We'll watch the development of Cam, who's making some plays. And then we get to McKissick. And I think we're watching this as a whole game data point, because it's very possible that because of Alex Smith's game at this point in his career, that McKissick's going to have 6, 7, 8 catches a week and be a running back too for PPR leagues. So we'll watch that. And I do think that McKissick versus Duke Johnson, if David Johnson's out, isn't an obvious call. You're talking about that low end running back 2 for PPR leagues with a high floor. And just because of twice we've seen Alex Smith, twice he's targeted J.D. McKissick frequently, McKissick's a solid player. McKissick's not just a street free agent who you pick up and put a Band-Aid on the position. He has contributed the last 3 teams that he's been with. So I think he can contribute to your fantasy team, and that's definitely something we're watching closely in this one. Because, that's exactly the kind of move you can make if you've been scuffling at running back 2. J.D. McKissick might have been free on the waiver wire this week, but he might not be free next week.
No, not at all. We'll see if DeAndre Swift continues to get an expanded role as he's gotten more snaps than Adrian Peterson over the last 3 weeks. We'll see what that continues on. And then to the Lions receiving core, Sans, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones Jr. I love that. And Danny
Amendola.
It is.
Play on the same team.
There you go. And then, of course, TJ Hawkinson in at the tight end position with Matthew Stafford COVID-free, knock on wood. What kind of fight can the Lions have this week?
The good news, Cease, is when Quintez Cephas gets a big role, you already sound like you're slurring when you say his name, so you don't have to even change it. It's what we're doing is impression of Lions fans who have to find a way to watch their team every week out of love for their connections of the team, but not for the team itself. Matthew Stafford may play, may not play. Obviously, this changes the outlook for the team, although, again, we're in a situation here where outside of TJ Hawkinson, who's been one of the only consistent tight ends this year, are you trusting any Lions without Golladay? And Golladay is going to be in a holding pattern, kind of like Austin Eckler, kind of like Christian McCaffrey. We'll talk about that. Where is there a point where they get shut down when the season is lost? Because, what's the point of risking your star player? Although, will Golladay be a star player next year? Remember, he's going to hit free agency. So a lot of talk in the chat room about how Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, alienating these star players, Darius Slay. Whether or not it's Chase Daniel or Matthew Stafford, you're not excited here, but obviously you're more inclined to play DeAndre Swift, maybe. Washington's actually done a good job against the pass this year, and you're going to see Chase Young, you're going to see the pass rush. So it does look like we would project this as a TJ Hawkinson game anyway. Marvin Jones Jr. hasn't exactly broken out after Golladay went out. You will see some Marvin Hall. Of course, Danny Amendola is there. And I think this is a game that we're just seeing if Detroit's going to keep playing for Patricia after the way they've been playing the last 2 weeks, to be honest. Is this team already checking out? Like I said, with the fans, you understand if they check out, and the team may follow. And, for the whole situation, you just want to see them turn the page. But the Lions are not the most responsive organization, unless Jim Caldwell's the coach. Then we move on, even if we're winning.
Right. And here's the thing. Do you think the players have enough power to come together and be like, let's get this guy out of here? A lot of teams will rally for their coach if they like him. Yeah, I don't know if that's the case.
Or will those players even be there? Or will the answer be, okay, Matthew Stafford, you've brought all of these players and said you want to change the head coach? Let's see what we can get from Matthew Stafford on the trade market.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where does the power really lie? Interesting. Jacksonville in Green Bay, Bloom. That one is interesting because we're going to see Jake Luton again, and we saw it last week. Okay, he's not going to run for a touchdown, most likely, but he's going to fire it deep. He's going to lock onto his primary target. And if that's DJ Chark, that's got plenty of fantasy value for you. Don't really do much of the tight end spot. James Robinson is a starter, so it's just another data point. It's an interesting game for me because, okay, Green Bay's going to roll them. Plenty of pass-happy time for Jake Luton. King of garbage time. Sure. Fantasy perspective, that all counts.
Yes. You're right that the headline here for this game is, can Jake Luton continue to hold his job, or do we keep Gardner Minshew, as we talked about on the Waiver Wire show, on our radar, especially in those 2 quarterback superflex leagues? Green Bay defense, certainly against the run, are not imposing. So you like James Robinson, at least as long as the game is close, and Robinson's done enough that I don't think you hesitate to play him. Johnson's and JD, etc. But again, we're watching if this team stays competitive like they did last week against Houston, thanks in part to DJ Chark. And you saw Chark get that 73-yarder to open the game, but he had something like 6 for 73 for the rest of the game. So now we're not going to get questions about should I start DJ Chark. I think you're going to start DJ Chark. Watching Visca's status with the hamstring, there's hope he's going to play. If he doesn't play, Chris Conley is the guy that you pivot to as a desperation play, not Keelan Cole, who was barely involved. And then again, Tyler Eifert made a few plays last week, so he's there as a desperation play. And we'll just see if Jake Luton can do any better, and the team can do any better than San Francisco did last week, making a trip to Lambeau, where sometimes that defense could get in feeding frenzy mode. And we know Aaron Rodgers usually plays his best football.
Yes, we've got the Packers side. It's everybody.
Yeah.
But is Alan Lazard back? I'm trying to dig up on that, Bloom.
He flew with the team last week. They didn't activate him, but you have to think with 10 days that he's going to be back. And usually core muscle surgery, I'm not going to do Dr. Gene here, we can ask him tomorrow night. But usually core muscle surgery is one of those ones where they hit the return to play timeline consistently.
Yeah, so here we go. And this could be obviously big for Rodgers, big for Jones, big for Adams. Of course, now behind that, Jamal Williams is back. I'll throw him in as a what the heck flex at least, Bloom. Right. You could get a lot of work. Green Bay up by 30 in the first half. Right. Just give it over to Jamal Williams. So there's some interesting, maybe reserve guys, a Lazard, a Williams that you might be considering if this matchup goes the way we think it will.
When you set your DFS lineups, is it an Adams week or is it a Jones week? It could be like Francis said, there you go, 50-point Jones week. It could be a 3 or 4 touchdown week for Aaron Jones. It could be another 2 or 3 touchdown week for Devontae Adams. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is a safe play. Maybe he doesn't carry the ceiling of Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray, but certainly at home against Jacksonville, there's bad beats where Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams score all the touchdowns on the ground. But there will be a lot of touchdowns. What about, what heck flex, Lazard, Valdez-Scantling, you like Tanyan as a what the heck tight end. The ceiling is there for all these guys. They've all had big games this year, but at the same time, Adams and Jones are doing what they're doing. So you almost like those guys better in competitive games than games where the offense might not have to do much in the second half. So even though the matchup is great, I'm not sure that you're playing those down ticket guys for Green Bay. And, for Green Bay, I think you just want to see them continue that feeling of dominance. They still have some games left that I think are going to test them the way the Minnesota game tested them, the way that the Tampa game tested them. And in fact, next week, Indianapolis, then Chicago. So we'll tune up before we see them face a physical team again.
A monumental matchup in the NFC East. The Eagles and the Giants are up next in this program. And the Eagles side, it's like, well, how's Carson Wentz going to play? Carson Wentz is playing like Drew Lock, and that's not how you want to play. Trust me. Yeah. Okay, with Carson Wentz out there, rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, it's got a trickle-down effect for the rest of the offense. Some Eagles fans, I don't know if our man Jason Wood's still in the chat room, but it's like, okay, Eagles fans, where's the cutoff point with Carson Wentz? Like, seriously, if he doesn't start playing better, what do the Eagles do? And Bloom against the Giants. This one's a big one. What do the Eagles do this week?
The NFC East it's a farce.
So silly.
It's a farce because you have the last time these two teams played, the Giants blew it at the end. But remember, Washington has blown 2 games at the end of the Giants, or they could be in first place. And Dallas, of course, there's any number of ways that they should be doing better. Philly's in first place, though. Now, if the Giants come in this game, they will go to 3-7, and Philly will be 3-5-1. That tie that Philly got against Cincinnati may win them division. That may be the difference. Would that be perfect, Cecil? I mean, in the Cecil Lammey universe especially, that the reason a team won the NFC least this year is because they got a tie.
Yes. Well,
I mean, that's ideal. Comparing Wentz to Lockett was super keen because the last time these two teams played, Wentz was not good. And then in the last 7 minutes, he was, and they won. Now, this time around, he's going to have Jalen Reagor. He's going to have Dallas Goedert, probably Miles Sanders. Of course, if Miles Sanders is out there, you're going to play him. Just make sure if Miles Sanders isn't out there. Boston Scott, who caught that game-winning touchdown. That was a sweet play. Sweet play. Scott gets into that same range as Duke Johnson. We don't even ask anymore, do you play Travis Fulgham? Travis Fulgham If anybody needs to remind you how unlikely things happen every year in fantasy football, Travis Fulgham, I guarantee you, was on 0.0% of fantasy analyst radar in week 1. By week 10, he's an automatic start. And hats off to him. And I'll say it every time we bring up Fulgham. Mike Kay, who was a beat reporter for the Jags, now beat reporter for the Eagles, after that 2 for 57 touchdown game against San Francisco, sent me a little DM saying he's going to be a keeper. Wrote a great story about him. Remember, by the way, that Richard Rodgers had 6 for 85 in this matchup a few weeks ago. So, yeah, you're liking Dallas Goddard. You're liking this Philly offense. What you really want to see is the Philly offense saying, okay, first half of the season's behind us. We blended in with all these bad teams. Now that we've got these pieces back, now that we've had a bye to calm down and regulate this, including Carson Wentz, maybe playing with more structure and more process, we can show that we're the class of this division.
Yeah, and that's the one team in the division you can look to and say, if they just figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, they've looked like garbage, hot, stinky garbage at the beginning of the season, but you have faith in the Eagles that you don't have in these other teams from that division. So can you make a run because your division stinks? Sure. And then get massacred in the first round of the playoffs. But anyway, let's talk about the Giants side of things. Gallman. We're watching Devonta Freeman's practice status, and we're considering Wayne Gallman because all he's doing is scoring touchdowns. Okay. Has Golden Tate kissed and made up yet? Like, that's, or what's going on there, Bloom? Like, Golden Tate watch. Yeah. All these receivers complaining, like, it doesn't do you any good with coaches like that. Okay, coach. Let's talk about what the Giants will do.
We'll see, Cecil. You know, when we're breaking down that Arizona's coming to Philadelphia for round 1 of the playoffs, we'll see. We'll see. Doug Peterson will have those guys ready to play. I don't know if they're going to get embarrassed in the playoffs. I don't know if the Giants will get embarrassed. One of the things we saw in this first game was the first of the 2 big runs by Daniel Jones. Why doesn't Jason Garrett use Daniel Jones as a runner more often? You want to talk about something that can make life easier for your offense, especially for your quarterback? It's when the defense has to play 11 on 11 for Sam Darnold. Like, we don't even know if he's going to be a good quarterback or not because of his surroundings. But Daniel Jones does have that theoretical upside with the running ability. Wayne Gallman's on a 3-game scoring streak. Actually, he got one against the Eagles in that first matchup. We'll see if Devonta Freeman's back. If Freeman's back, that doesn't mean plug Freeman in because it may be more of a split backfield. Golden Tate maybe trying to get his way out of New York or New Jersey, maybe. Austin Mack says, I'll stay on the field. I like that. This is where Darius Slayton's slump started. So Slayton versus Slay, probably not going there. Sterling Shepard, 6-7 catches, you know the drill there. And then Evan Ingram, consistent. I should really add him to the list with Waller and Kelsey and Hawkinson, at least for the last 3 weeks. He had a solid game the first time out. He had a nice diving touchdown last week. So you are trusting Ingram as he warms up. And the Giants basically playing for their pride, playing for Dave Gettleman's job. I don't know what they're playing for at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what the change in Ingram was for, because we all love Ingram and that natural talent, Bloom, but did he fall to their programming? Like, because did they reprogram him in the eyes of Jason Garrett? Like, oh, well, whatever.
Upgrade the software.
Eesh, with Jason Garrett, I don't know. He's on an old processor. Good old Jason Garrett. Let's talk about how do you bounce back from getting absolutely humiliated. Tampa Bay, Carolina up next. Important matchup here. And with Tampa Bay, it's okay. Tommy Brady, and take this as a Lassie bark if you'd like. Tommy Brady has had some meltdown moments in the locker room this year. You know, how does his team respond to that when he wants to kick the crap out of them and wants to, yell and scream and get people fired up? Okay, do you respond? It's Carolina's defense, Bloom. They should respond. So, all right, Antonio Brown. It's like you're walking on the eggshells around the Buccaneers because Tommy's pissed. Does this team respond in a pissed manner? Because we all know that, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. Let's talk about all this, that running back split. And just mainly for me, Bloom, the interesting part is not necessarily the talent, which we already know and know what they can do. It's just, do you come out guns blazing, both barrels, whatever you want to say, or are there some hiccups, some stumbling points here?
Yeah, that was my first note, Cease. Just how does this team react? And physical teams, like we saw what Tampa did to Green Bay, right? Physical teams we call them bullies. It's a pejorative word outside of the realm of football, but what it means is whenever you have that opponent on the run, when you have the fear chemicals, hormones releasing in their body, you sense that and you go in for the kill. What happens when the bully gets bullied? How does your view of yourself carry over? And Carolina's not going to back down from Tampa Bay. They played them competitive enough in the first game. And in fact, Carolina held Tom Brady down. Now, in another universe where Tampa Bay put up a lot of points and it was a shootout against the Saints last week, we'd be saying, but this is a different Tampa offense with Antonio Brown. Maybe the addition of Antonio Brown isn't a good thing for this offense, or it isn't time in week 10 to be integrating a new important piece of your offense when your offense was fine. They didn't need Antonio Brown. See, I'm sorry, I just keep going back to Narrative Street, but I just think it would be delicious karma if adding Antonio Brown sets this team off kilter when they had just gotten their recipe right. And then you also have another thing going on where, again, Bruce Arians is saying, oh, Mike Evans was open. Arians, Brown, Brady, lots of vibes here. Not good vibes. And again, I want to see how Carolina responds here. Brady, you probably still have him as a low quarterback one. Interestingly enough, it was Ronald Jones into the goal line last week. Unless you think this is going to be a back and forth shootout kind of game, it's probably Jones ahead of Fournette. Fournette's going to get the catches. I would guess Jones is first in line for goal line carries, and also if they do lead, the carries to kind of run out the clock. What's the wide receiver pecking order here? I don't know. Is there such a thing, Cease, as the squeaky wheel coach gets the grease? Right? Does Tom Brady throw more to Mike Evans after being called out? I mean, we know that Evans isn't going to face anything like Marshawn Lattimore this week. I would probably put Evans first. Do we count on Tom Brady to force the ball to Antonio Brown the way we expected him to, the way he did in his one game with the Patriots? I probably play Godwin over Brown, put Brown third, but this is a developing situation. And Rob Gronkowski and his trustworthiness is a developing situation as he got the targets last week, including in the end zone. Couldn't convert after he was looking like Gronk of old. So lots of questions. Cease, I think that as we do the fantasy analyst thing, we're always looking for trends, right? Like we're always looking for these indicators coming in. And there were no trends, nothing that pointed to Tampa Bay's offense having the bottom drop out of it. So how do you then project the next game? I don't know, but I look forward to watching it.
I look forward to seeing it. By the way, Bloom,
yeah,
I don't want to dox you, which, by the way, is awful when people do that.
That's okay.
Just a side note.
I'm an open book.
But your address is known by everyone because you live on Narrative Street.
Yeah, I'm the mayor.
How do you get to Narrative Street?
Sitting out on the stoop. Hey, everybody. People in New Orleans love to porch. Everybody waves at everyone, says hi. It's really nice. It's heartwarming.
I love it, man. Love the community. That's what it's about. Panther side. Love it if Christian McCaffrey would know his MRI results, girl. It's the morning. I think we're supposed to know him today. Did they reveal it yet? Okay.
He's week to week now and out for this week.
Okay. Yeah. So the day-to-day thing was, what'd you say, Bloom? Like day-to-day until the MRI results.
Right.
So here we go. Mike Davis. Okay. We very rarely do you get a guarantee if he's on the waiver wire. Like you get guys you pick up and I hope he comes through. Like, no, with Davis, if someone dropped him because McCaffrey was back last week, you scoop and score with him. So, okay, that makes sense. Robbie Anderson makes sense. Using more DJ Moore would make sense. We'll see if that happens for this team. And the reflection on Teddy this week against Tampa. And obviously that tough front seven too. Bloom, very interesting game to say the least.
You kind of feel for Carolina, the Vegas game was there for them. The Chicago game was there. The New Orleans game was there. The Kansas City game. We could be talking about this team not just as a feisty, tough out, but as a team that could go to the playoffs in what was supposed to be a tear it down to the studs rebuild year. So again, kudos to Matt Rule. The program. Kudos to Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy's been a real tough fantasy puzzle week to week because he had a low ceiling against Atlanta. And then, the Atlanta game was kind of there, although he wasn't playing well. But then he has a great game against Kansas City, and he leaves it all out there. And Tampa Bay's defense is kind of like Steelers' NFC version, right? Where if the pass rush gets home, if they're controlling the trenches, you're going to have a long afternoon. But if the pass rush doesn't get home, there are going to be guys open downfield. And because of that, I think, of course, you're going to play Robbie Anderson. But are you going to play DJ Moore? DJ Moore had 8 for 120 in the first matchup. Teddy actually threw for 367. No touchdowns. This was also the game when Christian McCaffrey went down in week 2. Mike Davis came in for 8 for 74. Of course, you're playing Mike Davis, by the way. Hopefully you didn't drop him. If you did, yoink him off the waiver wire this week. You're very happy. I asked this to Mike Tagliere season. I don't know if I have a good answer. Who's the better play this week? Curtis Samuel, coming in off of 2 great games, or DJ Moore, who had the big game in the first matchup? Probably favor the more recent trend in Curtis Samuel. I think if it's a successful day for Teddy, all 3 wide receivers will be good plays. If it's not, maybe none of the 3 will be good plays. But we saw in a comeback attempt last time around, Teddy was able to rack up some yards in the second half. So that could also be an out here. I'm just excited to see Carolina. Maybe it's that Saints fan energy from the city, Cease, because now Tampa's staggered. You want to see them really not be able to get their bearings. Carolina has a chance to really affect their season in a bad way.
Yes, in a bad way is what the show will be wrapped up with, is talking with the Raiders in a bad way. This could be some bad football from Denver's side of things. Now, full disclosure, because it's Wednesday morning, I'm heading out to practice in about an hour and 15 minutes. I'll head out to Dove Valley and just kind of see what's going on with this team. But you're left wondering, okay, Philip Lindsay failed last week. I know. From Colorado, went to Colorado. Yeah, he still sucked against the Falcons. Melvin Gordon's not good at football. Drew Lock doesn't fit the Pat Shurmur system. Jerry Jeudy, there was a mandate to target him frequently. Okay, let's hope that continues. Noah Fant doesn't have to worry about Albert O anymore, Bloom, but also Noah Fant's about 80%, 85%. So he's not himself fully, man, although you do give him a lot of credit for getting out there and fighting through that ankle injury. Tim Patrick is back out there, but does that mean nothing like last week, basically? Or does it mean something? KJ Hamler is a what the heck flex? Maybe. But this team's got to be better early in games because this garbage time stuff from a fantasy perspective, okay, that's fine. And Drew Lock running the ball, I almost tweeted this during the game, but my feelings about social networking, Bloom, which I constantly bitch about on this show. We're past 10 minutes, so I can say that. I almost tweeted, I don't really want to see Drew Lock run. One, it's not good. It's not like Justin Herbert running. It's not like Josh Allen running. It's certainly not like Lamar Jackson or anything like that. But Drew Lock leading the team in rushing last week, that's not what you want. He'll get hurt again. Do you want that? You're trying to evaluate the kid, and it's not being good. So now against the Raiders, this is on the road against the Raiders team that would love to continue to hold Denver down. They're the worst team in this division. Okay. I don't have faith that they will have 4 quarters of good football or 3 quarters or even 2 quarters, Bloom. Would they have a 4th quarter in garbage time? Sure. We've seen it 2 weeks in a row. We'll make it 3. That's what the Raiders want.
Yeah, I think that if we look through the first 3 quarters of the last 2 games, they have basically been a Jets level team. The Jets actually played better, so worse than the Jets. Adam Gase getting good football out of Joe Flacco, where Denver couldn't. So I think that Jeudy is someone you err on the side of playing this week because, as you said, Cease, if you're watching the offense and if you've been following along with all the clues, Cease, you've been giving, it's like a treasure hunt, like a treasure map. The treasure finally was found because there's fingerprints on the offense. This offense isn't naturally unfolding based on what plays are working and evolving. It's more like someone's just grabbing the wheel out of Drew Lock's hands and saying, steer here, steer here. So I'll take that. I'll take that as something leading into this week. Running backs, I don't think you play either of them. It's not going to get resolved. As you said, Cease, they abandoned the run. They weren't running effectively anyway. Falling behind is not a good recipe for running backs. You're not seeing the running backs getting heavily involved as receivers. If there is one, it's been Melvin Gordon. Not Philip Lindsay. And then, as you said, with Albert O out, even an 85% Noah Fant is probably one of the 12 best fantasy football tight ends, although you have a little bit of pause because of his inability to be fully healthy, which gives you Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, and it's not as wide with no Cortland Sutton as that wonderful target tree bearing all of this fruit that we pictured coming into the season, but it does make it a little more difficult to say Fant is an automatic play. I think what's automatic here is that Las Vegas is going to take this game very seriously, pushing for the playoffs. And with Denver, especially in these divisional games, even as they've been a bad team under Vic Fangio, they've been very competitive. How long does that last? Raiders certainly have a chance to assert their supremacy in this one.
Right. Was it Bukowski that said if it feels good to you, it's got to be good for you? That's
James Brown, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, that's Sigmund Bloom for me, because that's what I always think.
Yeah.
It's like, feels good to you, it's got to be good for you. It's like when you asked me why I was walking the dog this morning for the show. I was like, because I'm fat. Like, I need to lose weight. Yeah. But it feels good, right?
Oh, it's great. Breathe it in.
Yeah, breathe it in. Breathe in that mountain air. Doesn't feel good watching the Broncos. That's for sure. The Raiders side of things, it doesn't feel good the way they're using Henry Ruggs. Like, you could use him more. You could target him more. You could go. Darren Waller's going to have a monster game. Okay, everyone start Waller. Get him in twice if you can. We're watching Josh Jacobs out there. And Devontae Booker's worth of what that flex. Although it seems like all of our revenge games that we've talked about, Le'Veon Bell revenge, Melvin Gordon revenge. Like, it's the revenge of the revenge. All right, that movie script. But hell, have some fun with it. Booker didn't do anything with the Broncos, mainly because he showed up and mouthed off about my man CJ Anderson, and then CJ wouldn't ever let him get anything. So, you know, what's Booker, like 30? Because he went to college for 6 years. Most of the time, that's what doctors do. But anyway, so Devontae Booker and his revenge game, he's got the wooden spoon and the Wachata out for the Denver Broncos this week.
Yeah, the Raiders probably performing some involuntary surgery on the Broncos defense this week. Still, you would expect this to be a Josh Jacobs game. We're watching the Josh Jacobs and Devontae Booker split here. The Broncos have lost so many key players up front. Although Shelby Harris is gone.
He's going to play.
He's going to play. So at least he's coming back. But you already, Jarrell Casey, Mike Purcell, these are cornerstones of the defensive line. So you like Jacobs, you even like Booker as a what the heck flex here, and we're watching to see if he's more than just a backup. You know that Derek Carr is going to find Darren Waller, and he's going to be one of our safe plays. And after that, where's Henry Ruggs? Nelson Aguilar might catch one pass for 40 yards and a touchdown. You're not counting on that. Hunter Renfrow, you like more when it's a shootout. You like more when it's a game that Carr's going to have to throw a lot. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll also watch if Brian Edwards comes back soon. So this is where we're at with this offense. It's pretty clear who's reliable and who's not, and we're waiting to see if Derek Carr is going to be more reliable. But in a game we expect the Raiders to control, probably not the best week to plug Carr in.
And that is a wrap for part 1 of the Week 10 preview here on the Audible. Everyone, thank you very much for watching here on YouTube. Thank you very much for listening, Apple Music, Spotify, etc. Make sure to do all those YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We're the Audible. Stay tuned and stay frosty.